Right then, here's a question for you. If your team was buying a player from Manchester City, would you be excited that someone with such a successful club on their CV was joining, or worried that City didn't see them as good enough to keep and now you're actually getting some dead wood? Well, unlike most hypothetical questions on the internet today, I'm actually going to be exploring both sides of the argument and tell you why your team should, or shouldn't, be buying from Manchester City this summer. Now, this idea hasn't just come out of the blue, by the way, pun intended, but mainly because it seems like a lot of clubs do their shopping in Manchester. In fact, in the last decade, the club have made around £750 million from player sales, second only to Chelsea in England. So, back to the question at hand, and let's go with the positive angle to begin with, and why you should be buying players from Man City. As a baseline expectation, the chances are you'll be getting a technically very, very proficient footballer. Honestly, everyone from the best academy prospect to the best player on the team is going to be a serious baller. They'll possess good ball control, technique, and an immensely high level of tactical understanding because they've spent more than 20 minutes having their ear chewed off by Pep Guardiola.
Sit down! Nobody talk! Sit down!
Of course, some players are better than others, but as a group, they'll have a much higher level than the majority of the league. On top of this, the club has cultivated a winning mentality. Regardless of how much money has been spent on new players over the years, that doesn't always guarantee success. So the club have obviously worked on building and maintaining a level of performance that ensures they will win. Swiss international 𝗦𝗶𝗴Ｈِ even said so himself upon joining the club, stating, "You feel it in the changing room and from the whole club that the goal is to win as many titles as possible." You know what? Having read that out loud on the list of generic new signing statements, that has to be right up there. Anyway, I'm sure you'll be ready to point out that Manuel and the boys didn't quite manage to win a trophy this season, but these players have seen more silverware in the last few years than most professional players could only dream of. The long and short of this is that being technically, tactically and mentally proficient pretty much goes for every player across the board because they've either been brought in and taught this at a young age from the academy, or they've been brought into the first team because they've exhibited these traits at the highest level already at other clubs. But it's actually the younger players I want to look at in the transfer shop window because I think they are the best and most realistic signings a team could make, and here's why. So, number one, City sell some really good players way before their prime. And this isn't a case of the club not knowing how good players X, Y, and Z were going to be. It's just a case of a player being really good but not getting opportunities, being really good but needing to be sold for PSR reasons, or being really good and not quite as good as a big money signing. I mean, look at Cole Palmer, Douglas Luiz, Liam Delap, Jadon Sancho, well, the Borussia Dortmund version of Jadon Sancho. All of them have gone on to be key players in their side's success or even earn big transfers to top clubs that can rival City in the Champions League. These are the players that attacks can be built around. Heck, even the whole team can be built around them. When I watch Cole Palmer, it seems like leaving City actually was the best move because although he could have stayed and been a squad player winning loads of trophies, he's now the main man at Chelsea and playing with more freedom than any other City player. In fact, if you're a City fan, right now, a snap decision is on the table. Would you rather have Foden or Palmer in your starting 11? Maybe you could even leave your answer to this down in the comment section. But honestly, there seems to be a point where players decide to leave City early-ish on in their career when they still haven't had this sense of freedom and creativity restrained to a point where it can't be recovered, and it actually works out. Basically, you need to get your Cole Palmers out of City before they turn into a Phil Foden or Jack Grealish. Don't get me wrong, Phil Foden's unbelievable, but could we be seeing him being even better elsewhere? Potentially, but the second reason to buy from City is that the prices are usually good for what you get in two ways, both in the ability like we've discussed, but also for sell-on value, something that many clubs are now factoring into their transfer discussions. For example, we spoke about Palmer being very good and £40 million worth, but it's the ones who leave under the radar that can then be worth big money to clubs in the Premier League and even the Championship. Look at Morgan Rogers. He cost Middlesbrough £1 million in 2023, and 1 year later they sold him to Villa for up to £16 million, and he'd probably go for triple that now. The same goes for Romeo Lavia, who had played just twice for City in cup competitions, went to Southampton for around £10 million in 2022, and then 1 year later he moves on to Chelsea for £53 million. That's a huge profit. I mean, the only reason Ipswich couldn't have arguably got way more than their 30 million for Liam Delap is that amount was in the relegation release clause in his contract, but the rest of the list is endless in terms of turning a profit. Pedro Porro brought big money in for Sporting, James Trafford the same for Burnley it looks like, and I'd stretch this out to Jadon Sancho too, who signed for Dortmund for 8 million and then was sold for 73. I mean, the caveat here is that Dortmund also helped to develop him over a period of 4 years. It's still great profit, it's just not as quick of a turnaround as with the other players. My point is that there are first team quality players ready to come straight in and make a difference both on the pitch and on the balance sheet. But the final reason for buying City players is that Pep wants a small squad next season. They've signed a few already, so there's plenty to offload. I mean, look at the squad. You'd say that Jack Grealish is definitely on the way out. So is Kyle Walker, potentially Bernardo Silva, Ederson, Gundogan, even Stones and Ake could be axed if their injury worries persist. Having said all that though, this is the flip side of this argument. As all of those players I've just named as potentially leaving City in the summer, you'll notice are the experienced first teamers, and that comes with a big question for me. Why are they being sold? There's the obvious argument that some of them are the wrong side of 30, 31, 32, and I get that, but not all of them are. I mean, in previous years, the likes of João Cancelo, Calvin Phillips, Aymeric Laporte, Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Alexander Zinchenko, these guys all left in their 20s and haven't returned to the same level. Could it be a case of playing City's way absolutely knackers them out and they see a steeper drop-off in their physical attributes? Maybe. Or maybe the reason is they were either not quite good enough for City or just not quite good enough in general. Otherwise, City wouldn't have let them go. Of course, it's not an exact science, but I can only think of a handful of indisputable first-teamers that have gone on to better things after Manchester City. Those being Leroy Sané, Ferran Torres and Julian Alvarez, the latter two definitely benefiting from a little more freedom and consistency in their play. It almost leads to this. Would you rather sign an unproven youngster or a well-known experienced player, assuming they are in the same position with the same profile? I feel like the answer is the experienced player, apart from if you're signing from City. By experience, by the way, I mean first-teamer, not ridiculously old. So maybe shouldn't is too strong of a word when it comes to City's older players, but my takeaway from this would be that caution may be the best policy, as even though on the surface signing a big-name player from them seems like a good idea, there's more to it than meets the eye. Kind of like a transformer. Anyway, if Grealish and Phillips were returned to Villa and Leeds respectively, would they be the same players that left? Both are 29 years old, by the way, so it's not some retirement homecoming party. They've still got a considerable chunk of their careers left. As it turns out, I actually think both of these players would still be brilliant in their boyhood clubs, but that's just a hunch. Basically, all of this is to say that as soon as someone shows enough to get into the first team, but not enough they won't be replaced by a big, new, expensive signing, that is the one to go and get. At the minute, it seems like Nico O'Reilly is that guy, James McAtee too, but by this time next year, it could be someone else altogether. Those two are getting to that crossroads I mentioned earlier that seems to appear at pretty much the feet of every talented youngster that comes through the door at City. You either stay and get minutes where you can, or you leave and try to make a good go of it elsewhere. I've no doubt those two will be good, but they've literally just watched Kevin De Bruyne leave, Gundogan could be leaving, there's an opportunity to fill both of their boots, and then through the door walk not one but two brand new midfielders in the shape of 𝗫𝗓𝗍𝗫𝗓𝗍. These levels are absolutely insane. Well, that's it from me and my thoughts for today. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.